How did people survive the harshest winters in the medieval world? A gentle journey through medieval winter life. Close your eyes and let yourself drift back through time, back to a world where winter meant something entirely different than it does today. Picture yourself settling into the warmth of a medieval cottage as snowflakes begin to fall outside, each one catching the last golden rays of autumn sunlight before winter truly takes hold. In the year 1347, in a small village nestled between rolling hills and ancient oak forests, the first frost has just kissed the ground. The air carries that crisp, clean scent that promises snow, and smoke rises gently from stone chimneys, creating soft grey ribbons against the pale sky. This is the world of ordinary people, farmers, craftsmen, and their families, who have learned the ancient art of not just surviving winter, but finding warmth, comfort, and even joy in the coldest months of the year. The cottage that holds back the cold. Let us begin our journey inside the home of Thomas the Miller and his wife Eleanor. Their cottage sits at the edge of the village, close enough to hear the gentle turning of the water wheel when the stream hasn't frozen, but far enough from the main road to feel peaceful and private. The cottage is smaller than modern homes, but every inch has been designed with winter survival in mind. The walls are thick, so thick that Eleanor can sit comfortably in the window alcove, cushioned by wool-stuffed pillows that she sewed herself from fabric dyed with madder root, giving them a warm, rust-red color that seems to glow even in the dim light. These walls are made of local stone, fitted together with such care that barely any wind can slip through. Between the stones, Thomas has pressed clay mixed with straw, creating a seal that keeps the warmth inside and the bitter cold outside. The roof is thatched with reed and straw, laid in overlapping layers so thick that they form a golden blanket over the house. This thatch doesn't just keep out rain and snow, it creates pockets of insulating air that help hold the warmth from the fire inside. The windows are small, not from any lack of skill, but from wisdom passed down through generations. Smaller windows mean less heat escapes, and each one is fitted with oiled parchment that lets in a soft, honey-colored light while keeping out the wind. On the coldest nights, thick woolen curtains can be drawn across these windows, creating another layer of protection against the cold. Inside, the floor is made of packed earth, but it's not bare. Eleanor has covered it with rushes, long, sweet-smelling grasses that she gathered in late summer and dried in the sun. These rushes are soft underfoot and can be swept clean, and when they begin to wear out, they can be composted in the spring garden. Over the rushes, she's laid woolen rugs that she wove herself, their patterns simple but pleasing. Stripes of natural wool in cream and brown, with touches of blue from wode dye. The heart of the cottage is the great hearth, built of stone and large enough that you could almost stand inside it. This isn't just a place for cooking, it's the source of all warmth, all light, and much of the family's social life during the long winter months. The fire burns continuously from October through March, fed with carefully selected wood that Thomas has been preparing all summer. The art of keeping warm Eleanor rises before dawn, as she does every morning, but in winter the darkness seems to wrap around the cottage like a thick blanket. She doesn't need a candle to find her way. She knows every stone of the floor, every beam of the ceiling. Her feet find the soft woolen slippers she knitted herself, lined with rabbit fur that Thomas trapped the previous winter. Her first task is to tend the fire. All night it has been banked with ash to keep the coals alive, and now she gently blows on them, watching them glow orange and red in the darkness. She adds kindling first, small twigs and birch bark that catch quickly, then larger pieces of oak and ash wood. The fire comes to life with a gentle crackling sound, and immediately the cottage begins to feel more alive. This fire is more than just heat. It's the center of winter survival. The smoke rises up through the cottage, warming the air as it goes, before escaping through a hole in the roof. This might seem inefficient, but it's actually quite clever. The smoke helps to cure the thatch, making it last longer, and it also helps to keep pests away from the stored food in the rafters. Eleanor's clothing is a masterpiece of medieval winter engineering. Against her skin, she wears a long linen chemise, soft from many washings and naturally warming. Over this goes a woolen kirtle, a long dress dyed a deep blue with woad. The wool has been carefully prepared, carded until it's soft, then spun into yarn and woven into fabric. But it's not just any wool. It's from sheep that graze on the hill pastures, where the harsh weather makes them grow thick, oily fleeces that naturally repel water. Over her kirtle, Eleanor wears a surcoat of heavier wool, dyed brown with oak bark. This outer layer is loose enough to trap warm air, but fitted enough not to catch on things as she works. Her sleeves are long and fitted, and she can tuck her hands up inside them when she's not using them. On her feet, she wears thick woolen stockings that come up to her knees, and over these, leather shoes with wooden soles. The leather has been treated with neat's foot oil to keep it supple and water-resistant, and the wooden soles keep her feet up off the cold floor. But perhaps the most important part of her winter clothing is her head covering. She wears a linen coif tied under her chin, and over this a woolen hood that can be pulled up when she goes outside. Medieval people understood that keeping your head warm was crucial to staying warm all over. The warmth of morning preparations. As the fire grows stronger, Eleanor begins her morning routine. She moves slowly, deliberately, conserving energy and heat. Every motion is practiced, efficient, born of years of winter mornings. From a covered pot near the fire, she scoops out oats that have been soaking overnight. These go into an iron pot that hangs over the fire, along with water from the wooden bucket that sits near the hearth. The water hasn't frozen because the fire has been burning all night, but it's cold enough that steam rises from it when she pours it into the pot. While the porridge cooks, she tends to other morning tasks. She checks the oil in the small clay lamps that provide light during the dark winter days. These lamps burn fish oil or animal fat, creating a warm, steady light that's much safer than candles in a wooden cottage. The scent is not unpleasant. It's the smell of home, of safety, of warmth. She stirs the porridge with a wooden spoon worn smooth by countless meals. The oats slowly thicken, absorbing the water and becoming creamy and comforting. She adds a pinch of salt, precious and expensive, but necessary for health, and a spoonful of honey from the clay pot that sits on a shelf near the fire. The honey is thick and golden, crystallized from the cold, but it melts quickly when stirred into the hot porridge. This honey came from Thomas's own beehives, and it carries within it the taste of summer wildflowers, clover and heather, wild roses and elderflower. In the depths of winter, this sweetness is like a promise that spring will come again. The rhythms of winter. Work Thomas wakes as Eleanor finishes preparing the morning meal. He's been up several times during the night to check on the animals and add wood to the fire. But now he rises properly, stretching muscles that are stiff from the cold. His winter clothing is similar to Eleanor's in its layered practicality. He wears a linen shirt, a woolen tunic, and over this a thick woolen cloak that reaches nearly to his ankles. The cloak is fastened with a bronze brooch that belonged to his father, and it's been treated with lanolin to make it water-resistant. On his head, he wears a woolen cap that can be pulled down over his ears. After breaking his fast with porridge and small ale, safer to drink than water and warming to the body, Thomas begins his daily rounds. First, he must check on the animals. The cottage shares a wall with the small barn where their cow, Bessie, spends the winter. This arrangement isn't just convenient, it's practical. The animals' body heat helps warm the cottage, and their presence makes it easier to tend them in harsh weather. Bessie is a small, sturdy cow bred for the harsh climate. Her thick winter coat is almost shaggy, and she's grown fat on the summer grass, storing energy for the lean months ahead. Thomas checks her water, kept from freezing by the warmth of the barn, and gives her hay from the loft above. This hay smells of summer, sweet and dusty, and Bessie chews it contentedly, her breath creating small clouds in the cold air. The chickens roost in a corner of the barn, their feathers fluffed for warmth. Thomas checks their nesting boxes, finding a few eggs, precious protein during the winter months. The chickens are hardy birds, selected over generations for their ability to survive cold weather and continue laying eggs even when the temperature drops. The art of winter cooking. Back in the cottage, Eleanor has begun preparing the main meal of the day. In winter, this is a more complex process than in summer, requiring careful planning and efficient use of fuel and heat. The great iron pot hangs over the fire, suspended from a metal arm that can be swung in and out of the flames. This pot is one of the family's most valuable possessions. It cost Thomas a month's wages and will last for generations if properly cared for. It's already blackened from years of use, and it heats evenly, perfect for the long, slow cooking that winter food requires. Today, Eleanor is making pottage, a thick stew that will provide warmth and nourishment for the whole family. She starts with bones from the pig they slaughtered in November, when the first hard frosts made it safe to preserve meat. These bones have been simmering since yesterday, creating a rich broth that will be the base of the meal. To this, she adds vegetables from their winter stores. Onions, their papery skins rustling as she peels them, go in first. These have been stored in the cottage's coolest corner, braided together in long ropes that hang from the rafters. The onions are small but pungent, adding flavor and warmth to the stew. Next come carrots, parsnips, and turnips, all from their garden. These root vegetables were harvested after the first frost, which made them sweeter. And they've been stored in boxes of sand in the cottage's small cellar. The cellar is carved into the earth beneath the cottage, its walls lined with stone. Here, the temperature stays just above freezing, perfect for storing vegetables through the winter. Eleanor peels the vegetables with a sharp knife, her hands moving quickly and efficiently. The peels don't go to waste, they'll be added to the scraps for the chickens, who will pick through them for any remaining nutrients. Nothing is wasted in a medieval household, especially in winter. She adds barley to the pot, a grain that grows well in the cool, wet climate and provides substance to the stew. The barley has been stored in wooden barrels, sealed tight against moisture and pests. It will cook slowly, absorbing the flavors of the broth and vegetables, becoming creamy and satisfying. Herbs come next, dried thyme and sage from Eleanor's garden, hanging in bundles from the rafters. These herbs were picked at the height of summer, when their oils were strongest, and dried carefully in the shade. Now they add not just flavor, but important nutrients to the winter diet. As the pottage simmers, Eleanor tends to other tasks. She checks the bread dough that's been rising near the fire, covered with a damp cloth to keep it from drying out. The dough is made with rye flour, ground from grain that Thomas grew in their small field. Rye grows better than wheat in their climate, and it makes a dense, nutritious bread that keeps well. She shapes the dough into a round loaf, scoring it with a sharp knife in a pattern that's both practical and beautiful. The cuts help the bread bake evenly, and the pattern, a simple cross, reflects the family's faith. The bread goes into the small oven built into the side of the fireplace, where it will bake slowly in the residual heat from the fire. The craft of staying warm. As the afternoon light begins to fade and winter afternoons are short, Eleanor and Thomas settle into their evening routine. This is when the real art of winter survival becomes apparent, in the small rituals and practices that keep body and spirit warm through the long, dark months. Eleanor takes up her spindle and a bundle of wool that's been prepared throughout the year. The wool comes from their own sheep, animals that graze on the common land during the warmer months. In spring, Thomas helped with the shearing, and Eleanor has spent the summer preparing the wool for spinning. First, the wool was washed to remove the lanolin and dirt, then carded to align the fibers. Carding is done with special brushes that look like large combs, and it requires skill to create wool that will spin into strong, even yarn. Eleanor learned this skill from her mother, who learned it from her mother in an unbroken chain of knowledge stretching back generations. Now, as she spins, her fingers move automatically, drawing out the wool and twisting it into yarn. The spinning wheel hasn't been invented yet, so she uses a drop spindle, a simple wooden tool that's been used for thousands of years. The motion is rhythmic, almost meditative, and it keeps her hands busy while her mind can wander or focus on conversation. Thomas sits nearby, working on a piece of leather that'll become new shoes for Eleanor. He's softening the leather with neat's foot oil, working it with his hands until it becomes supple and pliable. The leather came from their own cow, slaughtered the previous year, and Thomas has been treating it slowly, carefully, to make it as durable as possible. Shoemaking is one of Thomas's winter crafts. During the busy summer months, there's no time for such detailed work, but winter provides the long, quiet hours necessary for tasks that require patience and skill. He cuts the leather with careful strokes, using patterns that his father taught him. The shoes will be simple but well made, designed to last for years with proper care. As they work, they talk quietly, sharing the small news of the day. Thomas tells Eleanor about the animals, about the quality of the hay, about the weather signs he's noticed. Eleanor shares her observations about their food stores, about the neighbor who stopped by for a chat, about the progress of her spinning. This conversation is more than just communication. It's a form of intimacy that helps them through the isolation of winter. In a world without books, Without radios, without any form of entertainment except what they make themselves, conversation becomes an art form, a way of sharing not just information, but companionship. The evening gathering. As full darkness falls, other members of the household begin to gather near the fire. Thomas's elderly father, William, emerges from the small alcove where he spends the coldest parts of the day. William is too old for heavy work, but his knowledge and experience are invaluable, and he's always welcome by the fire. Eleanor's younger sister, Margaret, comes in from the task of banking the fire in the small forge where Thomas repairs tools. Margaret is unmarried and lives with Thomas and Eleanor, contributing her labor to the household in exchange for shelter and support. This arrangement is common in medieval times. Families band together for mutual support, especially during the challenging winter months. The family settles into their evening routine. William takes up a piece of wood and his carving knife, slowly working on a new spoon. His hands are gnarled with age, but they're still steady, and he takes pride in creating useful objects during the long winter evenings. Each spoon he carves is slightly different, reflecting his mood and the natural shape of the wood. Margaret has brought her sewing, a new chemise that she's making from linen that Eleanor wove the previous winter. The linen is natural-colored, soft from many washings, and Margaret is sewing it with tiny, careful stitches. She's adding decorative embroidery around the neck and cuffs, using thread that Eleanor dyed with madder root and woad. The embroidery is simple, geometric patterns in red and blue, but it transforms the plain garment into something beautiful. The fire burns steadily, providing light for their work and warmth for their bodies. The flames dance and flicker, creating moving shadows on the walls and ceiling. This is the family's television, their entertainment center, their source of light and heat, all rolled into one. As they work, they share stories. William tells tales of winters past, of the great storm when he was a young man, of the year when the spring came so late that they almost ran out of food. These stories serve multiple purposes: their entertainment, their history, and their practical education about how to survive difficult times. Eleanor shares news from the village, gathered during her trips to the well and the market. She tells about the baker's new baby, about the merchant who passed through with news from the larger town, about the preparations for the Christmas festivities. This sharing of information helps maintain social connections even when travel is difficult. Thomas contributes his observations about the weather and the animals, knowledge that helps the family plan for the days ahead. He's noticed that the chickens are eating more, a sign that colder weather is coming. He's seen the behavior of the wild birds, whose movements can predict storms. This knowledge, accumulated over years of careful observation, helps the family prepare for what's to come. The art of preservation. As the evening deepens, Eleanor checks on the various stores of food that will carry them through the winter. This is a nightly ritual, ensuring that everything is properly preserved and protected from moisture and pests. The bacon hangs from the rafters, wrapped in cloth to keep it clean. This bacon came from the pig they slaughtered in November, and it's been carefully cured with salt and herbs. The salt draws out moisture, preventing spoilage, while the herbs add flavor and help repel insects. The bacon will provide protein and fat throughout the winter, essential nutrients that are harder to come by in the cold months. Nearby hang bundles of herbs, thyme, sage, rosemary, and others, their scents mingling in the warm air near the ceiling. These herbs were picked at the peak of their flavor and dried carefully to preserve their medicinal and culinary properties. They'll be used to flavor food, to make teas for health, and to add variety to the winter diet. In wooden barrels and pottery jars, Eleanor has stored other preserved foods. There's sauerkraut, made from cabbage that was shredded and fermented with salt. The fermentation process not only preserves the cabbage, but also creates beneficial bacteria that aid digestion and provide important nutrients during the winter months. She has pickled vegetables, small onions, carrots, and turnips preserved in vinegar and salt. These provide variety and important nutrients, especially vitamin C, which helps prevent scurvy during the long months when fresh vegetables are scarce. There are dried peas and beans, stored in sealed containers to keep them dry and free from pests. These legumes are important sources of protein and can be made into satisfying stews and potages. Eleanor soaks them overnight before cooking, then simmers them slowly until they become tender and flavorful. The grain stores are perhaps the most important of all. Barley, rye, and oats are stored in wooden barrels, sealed tight against moisture and vermin. These grains will be ground into flour for bread, cooked into porridge for breakfast, and used to thicken stews and soups. The grain stores represent security, the assurance that the family will have enough to eat until the next harvest. The comfort of routine. As the night deepens, the family's activities slow and become more contemplative. The fire burns lower, conserving fuel for the long night ahead. The light is dimmer, but it's still sufficient for simple tasks and quiet conversation. Eleanor takes up her knitting, a relatively new skill that's becoming popular among women of her social class. She's making woolen stockings for Thomas, using yarn that she spun herself from their own sheep's wool. The knitting is done with wooden needles, carved smooth and polished with use. The pattern is simple but effective, creating a fabric that's warm and durable. The rhythm of knitting is soothing, the repetitive motion of the needles creating a gentle clicking sound that blends with the crackling of the fire. Eleanor doesn't need to look at her work, her fingers know the pattern by heart, and she can knit while talking or listening to stories. Thomas has taken up his whittling again, working on a new handle for a tool that broke during the autumn harvest. He selects his wood carefully, choosing a piece of ash that's been seasoned for 2 years. Ash is strong and flexible, perfect for tool handles, and it works easily under the knife. He shapes the wood slowly, carefully, testing it frequently against the metal head of the tool. The handle must fit perfectly, neither too tight nor too loose, and it must be comfortable to hold during long hours of work. This is craftsmanship in its purest form, the creation of useful objects with simple tools and skilled hands. Margaret has put aside her sewing and taken up a wooden comb, working through her long hair by the firelight. Her hair is her crowning glory, and she takes pride in keeping it clean and healthy. She combs it slowly, working from the ends toward the roots, removing tangles and distributing the natural oils that keep it shiny and strong. William has finished his carving for the evening and sits quietly, watching the fire and listening to the gentle sounds of his family at their work. His hands rest on his knees, gnarled but peaceful. He's lived through many winters, seen many changes, and he finds comfort in the unchanging rhythms of seasonal life. The wisdom of generations. As the evening draws toward its close, William begins to share some of his accumulated wisdom about winter survival. His voice is soft and measured, the voice of someone who has learned these lessons through experience and wants to pass them on to the next generation. The secret of surviving winter, he says, is not to fight it, but to work with it. Winter is not your enemy, it's simply another season with its own gifts and challenges. He talks about the importance of preparation, of using the abundant summer and autumn months to gather what will be needed during the lean winter period. A wise person begins preparing for winter in the spring, he says. Every decision you make during the growing season affects how well you'll survive the cold months. He shares practical knowledge about reading weather signs, about the behavior of animals before storms, about the subtle changes in wind and sky that predict the weather days in advance. This knowledge, passed down through generations of careful observation, helps the family stay ahead of dangerous weather. Watch the smoke from your fire, he advises. If it rises straight up, the weather will be fair. If it swirls and eddies, a storm is coming. Listen to the wind. It speaks differently before snow than before rain. He talks about the importance of community, of helping neighbors and accepting help in return. No family survives winter alone, he says. We are all part of a larger whole, and we must support each other through the difficult times. Eleanor listens to these words with the respect due to wisdom earned through experience. She's heard many of these lessons before, but they bear repeating, especially as she thinks about the long winter months ahead. This knowledge is her inheritance, as valuable as any material possession. Thomas nods in agreement, remembering his own apprenticeship in winter survival, learning from his father and grandfather the subtle arts of staying warm, fed and healthy through the coldest months. He's already begun passing this knowledge on to the younger members of the household, ensuring that the chain of wisdom continues unbroken. The art of simple pleasures. Despite the hardships of winter, the family finds joy in small pleasures that cost nothing but attention and appreciation. The beauty of frost on the window, creating intricate patterns that look like ferns or flowers. The satisfaction of a well-made fire, burning cleanly and warmly. The comfort of woolen clothing, soft and warm against the skin. Eleanor takes pleasure in the rhythm of her daily tasks, in the satisfaction of a well-prepared meal, in the progress of her spinning and knitting. These simple activities, repeated day after day, create a sense of purpose and accomplishment that helps her through the darker moments of winter. Thomas finds joy in his craftsmanship, in the feel of wood becoming smooth under his hands, in the satisfaction of a tool repaired or a problem solved. His work connects him to generations of craftsmen who have practiced these same skills, and he takes pride in maintaining the tradition. Margaret enjoys the social aspects of winter evenings, the conversations and stories that knit the family together. She's learning the skills she'll need when she has her own household, but she's also creating memories that will sustain her through whatever challenges lie ahead. William finds pleasure in the continuation of traditions, in watching his knowledge being passed to the next generation, in the comfort of familiar routines and the security of family. He's earned his place by the fire, and he takes satisfaction in his continued usefulness to the household. The fire burns lower as the night progresses, but it never goes out completely. Someone will wake during the night to add wood, to ensure that the warmth continues unbroken. This is one of the most important tasks of winter, keeping the fire alive, maintaining the heart of warmth and life that makes survival possible, the rhythm of deep winter. As December gives way to January, the true test of winter survival begins. The days are shortest now, the nights longest, and the cold most bitter. But the family has settled into the deep rhythms of winter life, and they face the challenges with confidence born of preparation and experience. The morning routine remains the same, but it takes on a different quality in the depths of winter. The darkness is complete when Eleanor rises, and the cold is so intense that frost forms on the inside of the windows. But the fire is still burning, the cottage is warm, and the family is safe. The porridge is especially welcome on these cold mornings, providing not just sustenance, but warmth from the inside out. Eleanor adds extra honey and a pinch of precious cinnamon, imported from distant lands and saved for the coldest days. The spice adds warmth and exotic flavor, a small luxury that makes the meal special. Thomas's morning rounds take longer now, as he must break ice on the animals' water and check more carefully for signs of cold stress. But the animals are well housed and well fed, and they weather the cold with the same stoic patience as their human companions. The work continues indoors, but it takes on a different character. The crafts become more elaborate, the conversations deeper, as the family settles into the contemplative mood that deep winter brings. This is the time for detailed work, for the creation of objects that will be treasured for years to come. Eleanor's spinning becomes more skilled, her yarn more even and fine. She's working now on thread that will be woven into linen for summer clothing, preparing for the warm months even in the depths of winter. The rhythm of the spindle becomes a meditation, a way of staying connected to the cycle of seasons, even when the world outside seems frozen in time. Thomas's woodworking becomes more artistic, as he has time to focus on beauty as well as function. He's carving a new butter churn for Eleanor, decorating it with simple but elegant patterns. The work is slow and careful, each cut considered and deliberate. Margaret has begun work on a tapestry, using wool that Eleanor has dyed in shades of blue and green. The tapestry will depict a garden in spring, with flowers and trees in full bloom. Working on this piece during the darkest days of winter helps her remember that spring will come again, that the cycle of seasons will continue. The community of winter. Even in the depths of winter, the family is not completely isolated. On days when the weather permits, neighbors visit, sharing news and providing social contact that helps everyone through the difficult season. The baker stops by with fresh bread, trading it for some of Thomas's excellent ale. The bread is still warm from the oven, and its yeast-sweet smell fills the cottage with the promise of sustenance. The baker brings news from the village, who is ill, who has had a baby, what the weather has been like in other areas. The parish priest makes his rounds, checking on the welfare of his flock and providing spiritual comfort during the challenging season. He shares a meal with the family, blessing the food and the household, and listens to any concerns or problems they might have. A traveling merchant arrives with a pack full of small luxuries, needles from the Low Countries, spices from the Mediterranean, ribbons and small ornaments that bring color and beauty to the grey winter world. The family doesn't buy much, their resources are limited, but they enjoy looking at the goods and hearing news from the wider world. These visits are treasured, breaking the routine of winter days and providing connection to the larger community. They remind the family that they are part of something larger than themselves, that their survival depends not just on their own efforts, but on the network of relationships that bind the community together. The Feast of Midwinter. As the winter solstice approaches, the family begins preparations for the most important celebration of the winter season. This is a time when the darkness is deepest, but it's also a time of hope, marking the point when the days begin to lengthen again. Eleanor has been saving special foods for this celebration: dried fruits, nuts, and the best of their preserved meats. She's planning a feast that will lift spirits and provide a break from the routine of winter survival. The preparation is as important as the celebration itself, giving the family something to look forward to during the darkest days. Thomas has been working on special gifts for the family, carved wooden objects that combine beauty with function. For Eleanor, he's made a new distaff for her spinning, decorated with intricate patterns. For Margaret, he's carved a small jewelry box with a fitted lid that closes perfectly. For his father, he's made a walking stick, strong and smooth, with a handle shaped to fit perfectly in the old man's grip. Eleanor has gifts of her own, knitted stockings for Thomas, warm and soft, with a pattern that's both practical and beautiful. For Margaret, she's embroidered a new chemise with delicate flowers in silk thread. For William, she's made a warm cap, thick and soft, that will keep his head warm during the coldest days. Margaret has contributed her own gifts: sachets of dried herbs that will keep clothes fresh and provide pleasant scents during the long winter months. She's also made small cakes from precious white flour, honey and dried fruits, treats that'll make the celebration special. The celebration itself is simple but meaningful. The family gathers around the fire, sharing the special foods and exchanging gifts. They tell stories of winters past, of celebrations remembered, of hopes for the future. The fire burns brighter than usual, fed with specially selected wood that creates beautiful flames. There's music. Thomas plays a simple wooden flute, and the family sings songs that have been passed down through generations. The melodies are simple but beautiful, and they help create a sense of joy and celebration that lifts the spirits and strengthens the bonds between family members. The patience of deep winter. After the celebration, the family settles into the deep patience that winter requires. The days are still short, the nights still long, and the cold still bitter. But there's a subtle change in the light, a barely perceptible lengthening of the days that brings hope. The work continues, but it takes on a different quality. There's less urgency now, more contemplation. The family has proven that they can survive the winter, and they can afford to relax slightly, to enjoy the peaceful rhythm of winter days. Eleanor's spinning becomes more meditative, her movements slower and more deliberate. She's working on wool that will become a blanket for the coming year. And she takes time to appreciate the quality of the yarn, the evenness of the twist, the way the wool feels in her hands. Thomas's woodworking becomes more experimental as he tries new techniques and explores new forms. He's working on a set of bowls, each one slightly different, exploring the natural shape of the wood and the possibilities of his tools. Margaret has begun to embroider again, working on a piece that will decorate their home. She's creating a scene from their daily life, the cottage, the garden, the animals, using stitches that she's learned from watching other women in the village. William spends more time in quiet contemplation, watching the fire and remembering other winters, other years. His presence is a comfort to the family, a reminder of continuity and survival, of the generations that have weathered winter before them. The fire continues to burn, the heart of their survival, the source of warmth and light and life. It's tended carefully, fed regularly, never allowed to die. Around it, the family continues their quiet activities, their gentle conversations, their peaceful coexistence with the winter world. The subtle signs of change. As January gives way to February, subtle changes begin to appear. The days are noticeably longer, the sun higher in the sky. The light has a different quality, less harsh and more golden. These changes are small, barely perceptible, but they're significant to people who live closely with the natural world. Eleanor notices that the chickens are beginning to lay more eggs, responding to the increasing daylight. This is a welcome change, providing more protein for the family diet and a sign that spring is slowly approaching. Thomas observes changes in the behavior of the wild animals. The birds are more active, their songs more complex. The squirrels are beginning to venture out more often, searching for the nuts and seeds they buried in the autumn. The family begins to make small preparations for spring, even though it's still months away. Eleanor sorts through her seeds, saved from the previous year's garden, checking them for viability and planning what she'll plant when the ground thaws. Thomas begins to think about repairs that will need to be made to the cottage and outbuildings once the weather improves. He inventories his tools, planning what needs to be sharpened or replaced. Margaret looks forward to the return of fresh vegetables and herbs, and she begins to plan the garden that will provide variety and nutrition during the coming year. William shares his knowledge of the subtle signs of seasonal change, teaching the younger members of the family to read the natural world like a book. This knowledge is precious, helping them understand not just when spring will come, but how to prepare for it. The wisdom of waiting. As winter reaches its deepest point, the family has learned one of the most important lessons of winter survival: the wisdom of waiting. In a world that moves according to natural rhythms, patience is not just a virtue, but a necessity for survival. The family has settled into a rhythm that honors the slow pace of winter. There's no rushing, no urgency beyond the daily tasks that keep them warm and fed. They've learned to find contentment in small accomplishments, in the gradual progress of their winter crafts, in the simple pleasure of another day successfully navigated. Eleanor finds peace in the repetitive nature of her tasks. The spinning wheel turns at the same steady pace, day after day, creating yarn that will eventually become clothing or blankets. There's something deeply satisfying about this slow creation, this transformation of raw wool into something useful and beautiful. Thomas has learned to appreciate the contemplative nature of his winter work. Carving wood requires patience. You cannot rush the process without ruining the piece. Each cut must be considered, each stroke of the plane deliberate. This slow, careful work teaches him to value quality over speed, perfection over productivity. Margaret has discovered that embroidery, like all needlework, cannot be hurried. Each stitch must be placed with care, each thread chosen for its color and texture. The work progresses slowly, but the gradual emergence of beauty from plain fabric is deeply rewarding. William, in his wisdom, understands that winter is nature's way of teaching patience. The earth itself is resting, he tells his family. The seeds sleep beneath the frozen ground, gathering strength for spring. We must learn to do the same, to rest, to gather our strength, to wait for the right time to grow again. The deep comfort of routine. In the depths of winter, routine becomes a source of comfort and stability. The family's days follow a predictable pattern that provides security in an uncertain world. This routine is not boring, it's soothing, like a familiar song that brings peace to the heart. Each morning begins the same way, with Eleanor rising to tend the fire and prepare the morning meal. The familiar actions ground her in the present moment, connecting her to all the mornings that have come before and all that will come after. There's comfort in this continuity, in being part of a tradition that stretches back through generations. The meals follow familiar patterns too. Porridge for breakfast, thick with oats and sweetened with honey. Bread and cheese for the midday meal, with perhaps some preserved meat or vegetables. Pottage for supper, made from whatever vegetables are available and flavored with herbs from Eleanor's garden. These simple meals are not monotonous. They're nourishing and satisfying, providing the energy and warmth needed to survive the cold. Eleanor takes pride in her cooking, in the way she can transform simple ingredients into something that brings comfort and strength to her family. The evening activities have their own rhythm too. The fire is built up after supper, providing light and warmth for the family's handwork. The conversation flows naturally, covering the events of the day, memories of the past, hopes for the future. This time together strengthens the bonds between family members, creating intimacy that helps them survive not just the physical challenges of winter, but the emotional ones as well. The art of making. One of the most important skills the family has learned is the art of making do, using what they have to meet their needs, finding creative solutions to problems, and wasting nothing. This skill is essential for winter survival, when resources are limited and nothing can be replaced until spring. When Thomas's best knife becomes dull, he sharpens it carefully on a whetstone, working patiently until the edge is keen again. When the handle of Eleanor's favorite spoon cracks, she wraps it with thin strips of leather, making it functional again. When Margaret's needles become bent, she straightens them carefully over the fire, restoring their usefulness. Clothing is mended and remended, patched and repatched, until it falls apart completely. Even then, the scraps are saved. Good fabric can be used for patches. Worn fabric can be torn into strips for bandages or cleaning cloths. Nothing is thrown away if it can possibly be used for something else. Food scraps are saved for the animals, potato peels for the pig, grain chaff for the chickens, bones for the dog. Even the ash from the fire is saved to be mixed with fat in the spring to make soap. Every resource is precious, every scrap potentially useful. This attitude of conservation and reuse is not born of poverty, but of wisdom. The family understands that resources are finite, that waste is not just foolish, but potentially dangerous. By using everything to its fullest extent, they ensure that their supplies will last through the long winter months. The healing power of warmth. As winter deepens, the family comes to understand that warmth is not just physical comfort, but a form of healing. The fire that burns in their hearth provides more than heat. It provides light in the darkness, a gathering place for the family, a source of comfort and security. Eleanor has learned to read the fire like a book, understanding how different types of wood burn, how to bank the coals for the night, how to revive a dying fire. She knows that oak burns long and hot, that birch catches quickly but burns fast, that pine provides cheerful flames but can create dangerous creosote in the chimney. The warmth of the fire penetrates not just their bodies but their spirits. On the coldest nights, when the wind howls around the cottage and ice forms on the windows, the fire reminds them that they are safe, that they have created a haven of warmth and light in the midst of winter's darkness. The family has learned to share warmth in other ways too. They sit close together in the evenings, sharing body heat as well as conversation. They sleep under piles of woolen blankets, each one adding another layer of insulation against the cold. They understand that warmth shared is warmth multiplied. Even their clothing is designed to trap and hold warmth. The layers of wool and linen create pockets of air that insulate their bodies. The close fit of their garments prevents warm air from escaping, while the loose outer layers allow for movement and comfort. Every piece of clothing is chosen and worn with the understanding that staying warm is essential for survival. The quiet joys of winter. Despite the challenges of winter, the family has learned to find joy in the quiet pleasures that the season brings. These joys are subtle, requiring attention and appreciation to be fully experienced, but they provide important nourishment for the spirit during the dark months. There's the joy of waking to find that snow has fallen during the night, transforming the familiar landscape into something magical and new. The world becomes quiet and muffled, wrapped in white silence that seems to hold the cottage in a gentle embrace. There's the pleasure of a particularly successful meal, when the pottage is perfectly seasoned and the bread rises just right. Eleanor takes pride in these achievements, knowing that good food is one of the most important ways to maintain health and morale during the winter months. There's the satisfaction of completing a piece of handwork, a pair of stockings finished, a tool repaired, a bowl carved smooth and true. These accomplishments may seem small, but they represent tangible progress, proof that the long winter hours have been used productively. There's the joy of unexpected visitors on a clear day, bringing news from the outside world and providing social contact that breaks the routine of winter days. These visits are treasured, providing connection to the larger community and reminding the family that they are not alone in their winter survival. There's the pleasure of stories told by firelight, of songs sung together, of quiet conversations that deepen understanding and strengthen relationships. These intangible gifts are as important as food and warmth, providing the emotional and spiritual nourishment that makes survival not just possible, but meaningful. The promise of spring. As February advances, the signs of approaching spring become more apparent. The days are noticeably longer, the sun stronger, the light more golden. These changes are subtle but significant, providing hope and encouragement during the final weeks of winter. Eleanor notices that the chickens are beginning to lay more eggs, responding to the increasing daylight. The eggs are a welcome addition to their diet, providing protein and variety after months of preserved foods. She carefully collects each egg, knowing that this small increase in production is a sign that spring is slowly approaching. Thomas observes changes in the behavior of the wild animals around their cottage. The birds are more active, their songs more complex and varied. The squirrels venture out more often, searching for buried nuts and seeds. These changes tell him that the natural world is beginning to prepare for the renewal that spring will bring. The family begins to make tentative plans for spring activities. Eleanor sorts through her seeds, checking them for viability and planning what she'll plant when the ground thaws. Thomas inventories his tools, planning what repairs and improvements he'll make to the cottage and outbuildings once the weather permits. Margaret looks forward to the return of fresh vegetables and herbs, and she begins to plan the garden that will provide variety and nutrition during the coming year. She dreams of tender lettuce, crisp radishes, and sweet peas, foods that will seem like luxuries after the preserved foods of winter. William shares his knowledge of the subtle signs of seasonal change, teaching the younger members of the family to read the natural world like a book. He points out the almost imperceptible changes in the light, the slight shift in the wind patterns, the way the ice forms differently on the water bucket. The cycle complete. As winter begins its slow retreat, the family reflects on the lessons they've learned during the long, cold months. They've discovered that survival is not just about having enough food and fuel, but about maintaining hope, finding joy in simple pleasures, and supporting each other through difficult times. They've learned the value of preparation, of using the abundant months to gather what will be needed during the lean times. They've discovered the importance of community, of sharing resources and knowledge with neighbors and friends. They've found that patience and persistence are more valuable than any material possession. Most importantly, they've learned that winter is not an enemy to be fought, but a teacher to be respected. It has taught them to appreciate warmth, to value light, to find contentment in simple things. It has shown them that survival is not just about staying alive, but about maintaining dignity, hope, and humanity in the face of adversity. As they sit by their fire on another cold evening, the family feels a deep sense of accomplishment. They've survived another winter, not just physically but spiritually. They've maintained their health, their relationships, and their hope. They've proven to themselves that they have the knowledge, the skills, and the resilience to face whatever challenges may come. The fire burns steadily, as it has throughout the long winter months. Its light dances on the walls, creating the familiar patterns that have become so comforting. The family continues their quiet activities, their gentle conversations, their peaceful coexistence with the winter world. Outside, the wind may howl and the snow may fall, but inside the cottage, all is warm and safe. The family has created a haven of comfort and security, a place where the human spirit can survive and even thrive during the darkest months of the year. And in the growing light of each day, in the subtle signs of approaching spring, they see the promise of renewal, of new life, of the eternal cycle that connects them to all the generations that have come before and all that will come after. They are part of something larger than themselves, participants in the great dance of the seasons, survivors who have learned to live in harmony with the natural world. The story of their winter survival is not just about one family, but about all humanity's long struggle to create warmth, safety, and meaning in a challenging world. It's a story of ingenuity and determination, of love and community, of the quiet heroism that enables ordinary people to face extraordinary challenges and emerge not just alive, but stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected to the rhythms of life itself. As the fire burns low and the family prepares for sleep, they know that they have done well. They have survived another day, another week, another month of winter. They have maintained their humanity, their dignity, and their hope. They have created something beautiful and meaningful in the midst of hardship, and they have reason to be proud. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments of beauty and meaning. The fire will be rebuilt, the daily tasks will be performed, the quiet joys will be discovered anew. The cycle will continue, as it always has, as it always will, carrying the family forward through the long winter toward the promise of spring. And in their small cottage, surrounded by the vast winter landscape, they sleep peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they have mastered the ancient art of survival, that they have learned to find warmth and light and love even in the darkest season of the year. They are the inheritors of ancient wisdom, the keepers of essential knowledge, the living proof that the human spirit can flourish even in the most challenging circumstances. The winter wind may blow, the snow may fall, the cold may bite, but inside their cottage all is well. The fire burns, the family sleeps, and the long, slow wheel of the seasons continues its eternal turn, carrying them all toward the light and warmth and renewal that spring will surely bring.